because after the ceasefire with Iran went into effect on Tuesday morning and ended 12 days of intense fighting against the power that had frightened us for years here in the Middle East, Israel proved to the world that Iran is a paper tiger. They make a lot of fiery speeches and threats, but in the end, they aren't able to match their words with actions. On the other hand, Israel doesn't make any threats, but when the time comes to act, we are ready to act. Let me give you a few statistics that make this point. The Air Force, which succeeded in penetrating Iran's air defense arrays after years of preparations, carried out about 1,200 sorties during the 12 days of this fighting, dropping thousands of munitions on military targets. About 80 SAM batteries and 250 ballistic missile launchers were destroyed in these strikes. In addition, more than 600 aerial refuelings were carried out. These are only part of the Corps' achievements that obtained up to the ceasefire. In previous plans, Israel prepared to attack the Islamic Republic's nuclear facilities in 1 or 2 strikes. However, in the current campaign, Israel succeeded in going out for strikes, cycling and in attack waves multiple times. In the initial wave of attacks, the Air Force disseminated Iran's defensive arrays from the outside inward. Thus, the aircraft, including fighter jets and UAVs, operated in Iranian airspace almost without interference for the entirety of this campaign. The Air Force's activities during the past 12 days was carried out within the framework of the 2 declared goals of this campaign, which are removing the nuclear threat and removing the ballistic missile threat. In response, the IRGC reacted forcefully, but not against Israel, but rather against the only enemy it has any ability to strike, and that's the Iranian people. Reports emerged on Wednesday that as many as 700 Iranian citizens have been arrested on suspicion of collaboration with Israel, and several of them have already been executed. A report in the Iranian media portal Noor News declared, without citing any evidence, that those who were arrested cooperated with Mossad and smuggled equipment that the organization used in the assassinations that it carried out in Iran. It seems that the most violent and dysfunctional regime in the Middle East is looking for scapegoats for its defeat. So guys, keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And above all, give a click to that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. Now, let's turn to TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani, who will explain what is going to happen in the near future in this region.
12 days of bombing and attacks on Iran by Israel and then joined by the US end abruptly as President Trump declares a ceasefire agreement, which is immediately after violated by the Iranians. But today we stand at a historical, at an important, at a unique moment in time where the Iranians are left without almost all of their nuclear program, Israel is victorious, and the US stands by to rebuild the shambles of what's left of the Iranian foreign policy in the Middle East. We're living in a dynamic and a unique time. The history that has taken place in this last 2 weeks in this region is nothing short of unique, groundbreaking, and 2, historical. So let's break this down. What happened? First of all, just to remind everyone, on the night of June 13th, Israel strikes within Iran and brings down, well, hell from above on the Iranian nuclear program and many of the heads of that nuclear program. But even more interestingly, Israel dominates the Iranian airspace for days on end, completely unchallenged by Iranian defenders. And then the story gets even worse. The US joins this game and bombs the remaining large Iranian nuclear facilities, Isfahan, Natanz, Fordow, turning these facilities that are deep bunkers underground into piles of rubble. What we know now is that this attack carried out by the US, executed mostly by 7 B-2 bombers carrying some of these incredible bunker buster bombs, it left what was left of the Iranian nuclear program in complete piles of rubble. The Iranians lost their centrifuges. They lost the majority of their enriched uranium stockpiles. Much of it is underground in piles of rubble, and what remains and has been hidden in other places is being tracked by intelligence. This war goes on for multiple days after the US attack. And after this original US attack, the Iranians strike back, sending multiple ballistic missiles against American targets in Qattal. The problem is that this feeble Iranian attempt was announced in advance to the Americans to make sure there weren't actually any casualties. President Trump comes out and he says to the Iranians and to the world, look, your response was unimpressive, your response was weak, it was feeble, and you've shown your weakness to the world. Meanwhile, Israel continues to dominate the Iranian airspace, bombing time and time again, bringing down hell from above on the leaders that remain of the Iranian government. At the end of this 12-day skirmish between Israel and the Iranians, and again, the Americans are the secondary party in this, or tertiary party in this, the Iranians are left with very little of their nuclear program. Almost all of it is gone, along with many of the leaders of the IRGC, almost all the leaders of the Iranian nuclear program, and many of the leaders of the Iranian military. And it gets even better and even more interesting than that. The American strike on Iran shows something that is very important for the world to understand. When the US strikes the Iranian facilities, specifically the ones that are buried deep underground, they do so in a very special way. They're undetected by radar completely during and after the attack, as in the Iranians don't even know what hit them till they realize that their nuclear facilities have blown up in pieces or collapsed into caves underground. This shows the power of the American Air Force. It shows their ability to bring death from above to bunkers buried deep underground, but it also does something else that's incredibly important. It exposes the vulnerability of the Russian air defenses and missiles. And here's the backstory over here. Russia is the one supplying the Iranians. Much of the Iranian air defenses, as used by other countries in this region, is Russian S-300 and other radar systems are Soviet-made systems or Russian-made systems. And this attack, along with the Israeli attack over the last 18 months on Iran, it shows you to what degree Russian military systems are lesser than that of the Western Bloc. And let me explain. The fact that the tiny Israeli Air Force was able in a matter of hours to dominate the Iranian airspace, to knock out whatever was remaining of their anti-aircraft batteries and radar systems, it shows the superiority of the American-made and Israeli-implemented fire systems. The F-16s, the F-15s, the missiles that they launch, the F-35s with their stealth abilities, and of course when you get to the B-2 bombers, it just shows what a gap exists between the American weapon systems and the Russian-made weapon systems. This whole situation reshapes the perception of power that Russia has in this part of the world and causes other allies of the Iranians, namely the Chinese, to double calculate or recalculate and calibrate what they're planning to do about the Americans. And we've already started to see the echoes of exactly that, of the people that are already saying, we might have underestimated the US's ability and overestimated our ability to stop them. So we're in a really interesting place when it comes to that, and a really interesting place that will ripple across the Middle East and into Asia, and of course the war between Russia and Ukraine, as to how powerful the Americans are and how much gravitas, how much weight the words of the American president have when it comes to reshaping diplomacy. Now let's go back to the Iranians. So a ceasefire was reached just 2 nights ago after the US response to the Iranian attack. President Trump calls up the Israeli Prime Minister and the cabinet, calls up the Iranians and says to them, look, we talked to the Israelis, they're ready to get to a ceasefire. Israel officially says, look, we've essentially achieved everything we wanted from this conflict so far. We've eliminated the scientists, the heads of the nuclear program, the IRGC leaders. We've humiliated the Iranians. We've been flying sorties through their skies, undisturbed in the middle of the day. They're just unable to stop us. And most importantly, the entire world has seen the power gap between us and them, including the Iranian people. So our mission accomplished. We've destabilized the government, we've exposed their weakness, we've removed the leadership, and we've hit the targets we wanted to hit, especially after the aid of the American B-2 bomber missions that took out those big, hardened underground. The Iranians, after the Israeli government says yes, and he says to them, hey, let's reach a ceasefire. They agree. This goes into effect yesterday in the morning, yesterday being Tuesday, and the Iranians almost immediately violate the ceasefire agreement by launching a symbolic barrage of ballistic missiles against Israel that killed over 4 people in southern Israel in the city called Beersheba and injured others. President Trump is furious, reportedly, warns the Iranians not to retaliate, And Israel, by the way, is on the way to bomb in Iran when we get a phone call and a tweet, I should say, by President Trump that says, don't dare bomb Iran again because this will ruin the ceasefire over a mistake made by the Iranians. Israel still drops the bombs, they just do it in a symbolic target, blowing out a radar site instead of probably something more dramatic that was planned. And we're now in a place of a ceasefire. And this is a fragile ceasefire. Right now, we really need to track and see where this is going. Will the Iranians make a run or a dash to start rebuilding their nuclear program? Will we have a blitz round of negotiations that will result in an agreement? Or more likely, will this be a drawn-out process where an international organization is built to supervise the Iranians, where the Iranians are dismantled of what's left of their enriched uranium, and where Israel is guaranteed that we won't once again face the threat of a nuclear Iran? And it's more complicated than that. Iran isn't the only player that's taken place in this. The conflict between Israel and Iran reshapes the power balance of this region. It makes us understand the relationship with Lebanon, Hezbollah differently, with Gaza, Hamas differently, with the Houthis in Yemen. They've all seen what the US and Israel combined are able to bring to the battlefield. And what we're able to bring is much more than the Iranians can stop. And now that that fact has been established, and it's clear to everyone who's looking at this, that there's only one victorious side in this conflict, which is Israel, along with the US, and not the Iranians, this will reshape the Middle East that we live in. Now is the time for hopeful processes, for hopeful change, such as Abraham Accords 2.0 or 3.0, depending on how you're counting, for Saudi Arabia to enter into the fold when it comes to an agreement with Israel and rebuilding this region, for a sense and force of stability to reshape this region in a way where maritime trade can move freely, and the threat of Iranian exported terrorism is lesser than ever before in my lifetime. And this is a hopeful message, this is a positive message, but it took the boldness of the Israeli Air Force to strategically attack the Iranians, to expose their vulnerability, to take a calculated risk, knowing full well that this could blow back dramatically against the people of Israel. It took that level of commitment and risk to reach this point. The US is stronger than ever before as far as the perception of power goes. Every country around the world that was considering going against the US, specifically the Chinese and the Russians, directly or indirectly, now knows what the US is able to bring to bear against Iran and any other adversary that would come their way. And it gets more important. The same applies also to Israel. Every country around the world knows what Israel is able to do. If we were able to bomb the Iranians over 1,000 miles away and do so repeatedly and knock out their air defenses day after day, well, we could do the same to you if you're an enemy of the state of Israel. We're stronger now, we're more resilient, and peace in this region comes out of strength and resilience. And now that Israel and the US have shown ample amounts of fortitude, of strength, of projection of power, now is a time for peace, now is a time for calm in this region. And God knows the people of Israel deserve that. God knows the people of this region deserve a time of peace and rebuilding and prosperity. But we're not done yet. There's one big piece that still remains on the table, and that is the hostages in Gaza. Israel can't rest and can't stop until Hamas is dismantled and all the hostages are returned to Israel by Hamas. And this will require international activity, international pressure to make sure that this happens quickly, and a relentless pressure on the Israeli army to bring back those hostages and stop the control of Hamas. So for all of those around the world who are calling for a ceasefire and for peace, absolutely, you are correct. That happens when we get back every last hostage. And to the people of Iran, we want to remind them that from the Israeli Prime Minister and down, the people of Israel don't resent the Iranian people. We love the Iranian people, and we believe that they deserve better than the Ayatollah regime that has controlled Iran for so many years. They deserve peace, they deserve prosperity, and they deserve something that isn't radical Islam. I believe we're entering a time of peace and prosperity in this region that is the result of people standing up against evil. And that is a takeaway from everything that's happened, that when you face this type of evil, an evil that is planning to destroy our way of life and belief, the only way to go against it is with massive show of power, of resolve, and resilience as a people. And that's exactly what the people of Israel and our ally, the US, have shown. Now back to you, Pinto.
Thank you very much, Mati, for bringing some clarity to our very, very complex situation and giving us a glimpse into the near future